Hey everybody, it's Maya Zahira with Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and I'm here in sunny Tucson, Arizona, and we are here in our Facebook group. The Facebook group is called Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group, and this is our free monthly Facebook Live class. So, since it is a Facebook Live, this is intentionally a casual teaching. So we're going to be chatting. I am going to be going over some really valuable content. So you probably want to grab a pen and paper. But this is intentionally not a polished video. So just a shout out and some love to our viewers on YouTube. I know you guys like really polished videos. This is not that. This is a Facebook Live, so I hope you will enjoy it. Some of you may know I was a school teacher 30 plus years ago, and I love teaching. And after I stopped teaching school, then I became self-employed and started teaching a variety of spiritual things. And it has evolved over the years, but I'm definitely a teacher at heart, and I really mean it when I say you probably do want to get a notebook or a piece of paper, because this is not going to be just one of those Facebook Lives where there's just one little tidbit. There's going to be a lot of information in here. That's how I always do the free classes. So if you're new to these free classes, we cover a lot. And also, if you're joining the Facebook Live here, I want to let you know, just really point out that we do have a YouTube channel also called Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And when people find that channel, they binge watch for hours. There are, I don't know, maybe, I'm guessing maybe 50 hours of free content. I might be totally off on that, but there's a lot. So as we're waiting for people to join, I want to just go over some announcements. First of all, I haven't talked about what today's topic is. Today's topic is super interesting, and I've been wanting to do a class on this for a long time. And it just never happened. So today we're doing it. The topic of today's class is Thoughtform entities. What are they? And so some of you may have no idea what they are. Some of you might think that you know what they are, but I noticed from some comments online that there was some misunderstanding about what they really are. So we're going to clear that up today. Let's see. So I like to just go over announcements at the beginning. That way, when everybody who's going to join has gotten the announcement and you're all on here, then we get into the real nitty-gritty of our important content, class content. Okay, so I'm covering a lot. I have 2 pages of just filled with words that I'm looking at right here. So I am going to be looking at my notes, and that's just going to keep us on track. So here, if you want to know more about the work that I do, I want to give you my website in case you want to find out, to find out more, get information on how to work with me. And so that website is psychicprotectionsanctuary.com, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And, okay, going through announcements. Oh, and as you guys are joining, go ahead and let me know where you're joining from. I'm going to go on a little side tangent from the announcements. I want to let you guys know, because I'm very transparent, especially with my students in my paid program, really transparent. I'm noticing I'm a little bit bouncing all over the place today. I actually did some clearing and some grounding right before. And the fact is that I'm a little bit nervous, not about doing this video. I've done a million videos over the years. I'm in a bit of a nervous energy because I'm waiting on some really big personal news. And so I noticed as soon as I woke up today that I was like, I don't think I'm going to find out today, but I might get the news today, or I think it's going to be tomorrow intuitively. I feel like I'll find out tomorrow about this thing, which I'm not sharing publicly what it is, but if I seem nervous or a little different or a little whatever, bouncing all over the place, that's what's going on. I thought I had grounded, but now that I'm here on the video, I'm kind of all over the place. But you know what? Like, life happens. We just keep moving forward. We're going to get some really interesting content here. So thank you for spending time here with me today. And I think that's going to be really helpful for me as well as for you. Okay, back to announcements. So for those of you who don't know, we do have a Facebook Live every month, unless I announce otherwise. So every once in a while, if it falls on a holiday, or like if there's some major shift going on in my personal life and I just need that month off. But almost always we have a Facebook Live the first, I have to think for a second, the first Monday of the month. And it's been the first Monday of the month for a long time. So that's not going to be changing. The times of the class has shifted a little bit. And so I'm not going to even go over the timing, but it has switched to daytime for those of us in the United States, to instead of evening, in order to help accommodate for all of our other beautiful, lovely viewers in other parts of the world who can join us maybe early in the morning or late at night instead of having to watch in the middle of the night. So that's why we made this switch, but you'll get the announcements for when the exact class time is in the Facebook group. And if you're watching the replay, again, the Facebook group is Psychic Protection Sanctuary Facebook group. Sometimes people go to the page. The Facebook page is just like, it's like a Facebook business card. That's basically all it is. If you want the group where there's all sorts of interaction and daily posts, that's where you need to be. Okay. And a couple more quick things before we get into our content. Let us know where you're joining from. We have several people here live, and I want to say hi to each of you, but you have to say hi to me first. And let me know what city, state, and country you're joining from. Okay, so I want to just give a little bit of clarity about the free classes versus the paid content. So for a long time, I've just been crystal clear about how everything is organized. And so all of the free content like this is always explaining, like it's explaining about certain phenomenon, like how this works, what this is, why it happens. And then in our paid program, which is called Spiritual Empowerment Academy, that is where we learn the hands-on techniques of what to do about it, how to discern whether it's a thought form entity or something else, how to discern what it is that you're dealing with, how to develop those particular skills, how to use the tools or the inner skills that you need to discern what's going on, and then how to clear it, how to address it. And that's what we cover in the paid academy. That said, there's still tons of really great stuff on the YouTube channel if you want to go there and binge watch. But we don't really do a whole lot of teaching you how to address it. That's behind the curtain, right, so to speak. This online Spiritual Empowerment Academy is a 12-month program, and there are tiers. So there's, depending on your budget and your needs, there are different tiers. Obviously, the least expensive tiers, you get a smaller amount. The expensive tier is where you get more. But you can go to my website, take a look, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com under the events tab, and you'll see information on that. So, oh, you guys, okay, I'm going to take a second before we get into our amazing, super interesting topic of thought form entities. I'm going to just check my device real quick because sometimes, oh, it looks like I am getting comments. So we have just a couple of comments we have Zahira is saying hi. We have Lisa. Lisa, you are new. It's really great to meet you. Okay, I'm going to just do this real quick. Sometimes I have to do this there. Sometimes not all of my comments are coming through. Okay, so Mocha is saying, good afternoon. And Mocha is also brand new. Welcome to the group. Jessica, hey, joining from Uland, Texas. Thank you for the pronunciation. Hope everyone is doing good. Cherry says hello from New Zealand. Yes, I think you're fairly new too, if I recall. Lisa's saying I'm from Utah. That's awesome. Welcome everybody. So we have, oh my gosh, there's like infinite number of topics we can cover. And I've been doing these videos for like 5 years, all about psychic protection. And there's still more topics to cover. I still have topics that I want to cover in the next few months. But today is all about thought form entities. Joe, I've been wondering how you're doing. Joe is saying, hey all, haven't seen you all in so long. Oh my God, Joe is in Scotland now. I'm going to start crying. I'm excited. Alex is saying, hola Maya in Tucson. That's where I am too, you guys. One of the things I love about Tucson, I moved here a little over 2 years ago. Even though it gets insanely hot for like 6 months of the year, the weather is very stable. We don't have any crazy ups and downs, and it's just like a beautiful sunny 70 degrees today. And it has been all month. No ups and downs. I love it. Okay, you guys, grab your pen and paper. I want to start off with a little bit of discussion. So who knows what a thought form entity is? Who knows what a thought form entity is? And please don't be shy. You know, if you think you know what it is, that maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, but everybody's going to learn from your answer. So think of it that way. Okay, so don't worry if you're not really sure. What do you think a thought form entity is? Okay, and an entity being, well, okay, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let you guys talk. Zahira is saying that she's joining from Seattle, Washington area. So it takes a minute for comments to come through. I should have asked this question. I apologize. Should have asked this question when I was still doing announcements, because it does take about 30 seconds for the comments to come through. Please share. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to be the mean teacher. I'm going to sit here and wait. I'm not going to let you guys off the hook. You're going to have to give some answers. But while I'm waiting, I'm going to make one more announcement. And that is that this week I'm going to be working on a brand new level for Spiritual Empowerment Academy. And I don't have all of the details yet because I have to figure out what is capable of being built on our course platform. But I can tell you that we're creating a level that is it's lower than the existing levels, so that people who need something but are like, I literally know people who are homeless and like really struggling, like they can't afford the like bells and whistles program. I totally get that. Like I've lived in some really bad circumstances in the past, so I really get it. So I'm going to be creating like an additional layer of the program where you can choose what you can afford, and it's a smaller version of the program. It's much smaller, but at least you can get something, and it's basically a sliding scale. So I'll be sending out information about that. It's being built this week. I'll announce it when it's done, maybe in the next 2 weeks. So it'll be fun. Okay, let's see what we've got here for comments. Mocha is saying, is it an egregore? Just curious. Yes, that is correct. I'm going to give more specific definitions though, but that is on the right track. One thing about my device is that if I don't read comments too quickly, they disappear. Joe, a presence in your mind that causes OCD thought loops and negative oppression thoughts to keep occurring in your mind, and you think it's you thinking it. Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned this. I don't want anybody to feel bad at all if I make a correction, because what you've done is you've helped point out a misperception in the terminology. So thank you for that. So I'm going to explain in a minute the difference between like OCD thought loops and a thought form entity. A thought form entity is actually an entity. So this is where people get kind of confused and the waters get muddied, and they think that it is, and that the OCD thought loops are a thought form entity. So I'm going to separate it all for us in a minute. Stephanie says, I have thought a thought form entity is an entity that is created from strong emotions and thoughts. Bingo. Yes. Lisa says, I'd say it's energy that is created by a person who has obsessive negative thoughts. Yes, that can happen. We're going to go over the different ways that a thought form entity can be created. Jessica says, when your brain overthinks and becomes a little too much and it clouds your mind. That's not quite. That's more of like an OCD thought loop, negative loop kind of thing. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. Stephanie says, strong thoughts from someone who means you harm. Yeah, okay, so Stephanie, Stephanie M., what you have pointed out is the definition that a lot of people think a thought form entity is, but it's not that. Okay, so we're going to like imagine a chalkboard and we're going to erase that. So the idea that a thought form entity is strong thoughts from someone who means you harm, we're going to just like erase that from the chalkboard, and we're going to be putting a new definition in there. Okay. And as I'm going through this today, if anything doesn't make sense or you want clarification, then just don't be shy. Let me know. And as I'm explaining things, if it's not crystal clear, okay? And we haven't explained everything yet. So if now things are unclear, and hopefully it will become more clear. Alex says, when an interdimensional being attaches to your thought process and affects your ability to make safe or coherent decisions. Let me think about that. Sort of. Okay, so that's sort of on, but it's not exactly on target. Okay, so once I explain, then it will all make sense. I'm so glad that I decided to ask you guys, because I had a feeling from some of the comments in the group in the last week that there were some of these misperceptions, and there's a lot of there's a lot of confusing information online as well. So I'm going to clear it up. And really, by the end of this class, I hope that you will have a clear understanding of what a thought form entity is versus what an OCD thought loop is. And the more you understand what's what, and you also develop your intuitive skills, which we do in the online academy, then you'll be able to determine what's going on. So you'll know, and what is attacking you, so you'll know what to do to address it or clear it, right? Hamad, is it similar? Okay. Hamad says, is it similar to creating servitors? Yes. That's it. Bingo. Ding, 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 ding. I feel like we're on a game show. That would be really fun. Oh my gosh. I'm kind of wacky today, you guys, because what I mentioned earlier that I've been trying to ground, but I'm nervous because I'm waiting on some important personal news. So I might be a little wonky today. That's okay. We're just going to have fun and bounce off the walls. That would be really fun to have a game show where we ask psychic protection questions. Cool. All right, so let's go through this. I'm going to look at my notes because I want to make sure I word this really clearly. Okay, and right now, so before I read the definition, right now, you probably now understand that a thought form entity is not the same as OCD thought loops. And OCD thought loops is what a lot of people and myself, we use that term to describe loops of negative thinking that perhaps are not coming from a good source. Like somebody telepathically just sent us a burst of horrible negativity, or there's an entity that's causing us to have negative thoughts, fear-based thoughts, etc. That's what a lot of people call OCD thought loops. Now, we're not diagnosing the illness OCD, but we're just using it in a more relaxed sort of way. OCD thought loops. That's where you have all of the negative loops, fear-based loops, thoughts that you're not good enough, thoughts that oh my gosh, something is going to attack me, I'm too afraid to sleep, what's going on, da 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 da, blah 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 blah. You know, all of those loops. All these bad things are going to happen. All these bad things are going to happen. The world is caving in. And it's just this like crushing mental thing. That's what we often call OCD thought loops. Okay. A thought form entity. I want you to focus on the fact that the word entity is a part of this term. So we're talking about a spiritual being, a spiritual being that is created by a thought form. So I'm going to read from my notes here. Okay. So a thought form entity is not a thought that is sent to you telepathically. Okay. An entity, just the word entity. Entity is a sentient being with its own consciousness. An entity is a sentient being with its own consciousness. So, examples of entities: a ghost, demon, elementals, fairies, jinn. My mind is drawing a blank. There's like interdimensional beings. There's I'm trying to think in terms of all the only negative ones though. There's all sorts of positive entities as well. So they are spiritual beings. An entity is a being that's not in physical form, that is sentient in that it has its own consciousness. Okay. So it is a being. And a thought form entity is a sentient being that has been created either intentionally or unintentionally by the thought, focus, or will of another person. So literally, you can literally create an entity. Okay. I'm going to read this again, and then I'm going to go over some side areas of this as well. So a thought form entity is an entity that has been created either intentionally, like on purpose, they knew they were creating it, or unintentionally by the thought, focus, or will of another person, or even strong emotions, feelings of faith, belief. If a person is focusing on this being, they can actually create it, bring it into reality, at least spiritually speaking. This can be done by an individual. An individual can create a thought form entity, or a group of people can create a thought form entity. And Virginia is saying, is this the same as a tulpa? I'm going to answer that just a second. And Mocha is saying, can you purposely create positive ones? And I'm totally going to get to that in a second too. So, all right, there's so much here and it's complicated. So I do acknowledge I'm looking at my notes a lot. Let me see here. Okay, so other terms for thought form entity. In the Tibetan tradition, they refer to it as a tulpa, Tulpa. A tulpa is another word for thought form entity. And the word tulpa comes from the Tibetan tradition. There is also another word that's really interesting, and it is called Egregore, and it's spelled Egregore. Let me spell that again. Blah. Egregore. 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 I'm pretty sure I spelled that right, but if you type it in Google, it'll give you the correct meaning. That comes from Greek, and that is when a group of people have created a thought form entity. Stephanie M says, can you create a healing entity? Yes, you can. Yeah, we're going to get into that in the next section of information. I'm not going to go into details about that, but I'll touch on it. Mocha, a teacher with lots of notes is always a good sign. Yeah, I definitely have the teacher archetype. You want to see? It's like, I don't know if you guys can see. It's like, that's how much we're covering today. You know, I love all of what everybody's doing online, but I gotta say, the teacher in me is always super annoyed when I watch a Facebook Live and they don't teach anything. It's just, hi so-and-so, hi so-and-so, hi so-and-so. And I think saying hi is important, but like, we're here to learn something. Like, let's do this, you know? So yeah, we have some bantering, but we're going to learn a lot today. Wes says, that's what I was thinking, but couldn't remember the word. Yeah. And Mocha says, yes. Yeah. Thanks you all for being here. Okay. So yeah, this class, like the concepts of just like separating all of it, getting all the words so that we understand everything, it's a little more complicated than some of the other topics. So there's definitely a lot of notes to go into. Okay. And Mocha says, amen. Yeah. All right. So we've just gone over the basic definition of what a thought form entity is, but we're going to go into more details in a moment. We've also talked about how another term for thought form entity is tulpa. And sorry, I'm having a goofy day. Stutter. I'm having a weird day. I'm having a fun day. I'm going to reword that. I'm having a fun day. Another term is egregore from Greek tradition. And that is when a group of people have created an entity. Okay. And a thought form entity is not a thought that is sent to you telepathically. Telepathic psychic attack is actually really common. And I've worked with a lot of people who've worked with dark spiritual teachers who have been very gifted telepaths who've sent all sorts of thoughts telepathically to the victim. And that definitely happens. But that is not what we're talking about here today. We're talking about entities, that a particular type of entity that is called a thought form entity or a tulpa. Cherry is saying, can entities be passed down via ancestors? Yes. So speaking generally, not speaking specifically about thought form entities, absolutely yes. Entities in general can be passed down through your blood ancestry, as well as through your own ancestry, like your past lives. That said, thought form entities, in my observation, I haven't seen anybody who's been attacked by a thought form entity and have that be passed down generationally. And I haven't seen that as often as I've seen a lot of other entities like jinn and demons being attached to a family line. And the reason is because in some ways, and I know not everybody's going to agree with me on this, but in my observation, in some ways, thought form entities are less powerful. Unless it is an egregore where like millions of people have focused their intent and belief into a certain entity, the existence of a certain entity. And when millions of people have focused on creating or believing in a certain entity, then that entity is going to be pretty strong. But just if there's one black magician creating a thought form entity to attack a person, it's not going to be nearly, in my observation, powerful enough to stay in form and not disperse itself through multi-generations. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Lots of stuff to explain today. Okay, so a thought form entity can be positive or negative. So we had a question before from Stephanie. Can you have a healing thought form entity? And the answer is yes. I personally don't work. I don't personally work with positive thought form entities myself. I'm just really picky about what energies I work with, and I don't want to create thought form entities and then because then they have a mind of their own, they have their own consciousness, and it's like, okay, then what? Like maybe you lose control over them or whatever. That's just my preference. But I know there are people who create thought form entities for healing purposes and for other positive purposes. It's definitely a thing that's done. It's not something that I have done. So just letting you know that, because it just feels, I just avoid anything that has potential hazards, that like anything that's not necessary. If there's a better way to do it that doesn't have potential hazards, then I'll do it the other way, right? Okay, so you can have positive or negative. And let's see. So a thought form entity can be created to protect, heal, or harm. Protect, heal, or harm. Okay, and I think it was Hamad who asked earlier, or somebody asked earlier, is this the same as a servitor? And yes, so a servitor, it's hard to say, is the term used when a magical practitioner uses their magical skills to create an entity to do what they want, whether it's to protect, heal, harm, that, to do something for themselves or another person. I'm sure they don't want to harm themselves, but to protect or heal themselves, or to to protect, heal, or harm another person. So another term for thought form entity that is created intentionally by a magical practitioner is a servitor. Servitor. They're serving their master. Okay. There's a lot of books out there, by the way, that have this kind of perspective where the practitioner, the magical practitioner, is calling in beings, either creating a thought form entity or thought form entities, or calling in demonic beings, jinn, other types of beings to do the magician's bidding. And when I pick up books like that, I'm like, dumb, so stupid. And I don't mean to offend anyone. Like, if you're into that, most people who are into that aren't really attracted to work with me, because I tend to attract people who are really wholesome and down to earth. But it's really not a good idea to, in my opinion, to have entities doing your bidding, because guess what? They can decide that they're pissed off at you and then they want to do their own thing. So that's my personal opinion. I don't think it's very safe. Okay. Mocha is saying, it's cool that we're all basically on the same page with our current learning engagement. Awesome flow today. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I think so too. Thank you for the positive encouragement. Yeah, it does seem like everybody's on the same wavelength. Okay, so there are two ways that a thought form entity can be created. Now, I'm not going to go into the magical practices. I'm not going to explain that to you. We're being really general here today. A thought form entity can be created either knowingly or unknowingly. So we're going to explain how that works. First, when a thought form entity is created knowingly on purpose by a person or a group, but for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to talk about if a person creates it. So a person is on purpose wanting to create a thought form entity. This is a person who knows how to create, they have knowledge in how to create a thought form entity, and they're going to do so purposefully with esoteric practices, magical practices, ritual, spiritual knowledge, etc. And I'm going to say like misuse of spiritual knowledge, because usually, the clients that I deal with, they're dealing with people who have created something negative to send to them, not healing. So that's a misuse of power. That's a misuse of knowledge. In my observation, and of course, I'm working with people who are trying to escape from being attacked. So I have a particular perspective because of that. In my observation, when someone knowingly creates a thought form entity like this, it's usually created for negative purposes. Not always, but the people that I work with are having to clear off stuff that was done to them negatively, right? So here's what happens. The negative spiritual practitioner intentionally, through dark magical practices, creates this entity, and then the idea is that then the entity is going to attack the targeted person. Okay, so the magical practitioner, and I should specify the dark magical practitioner, because there's not all magical practitioners are bad. There's lots of wonderful ones out there. So the dark magical practitioner, the person who's misusing and abusing their esoteric knowledge, they are intentionally, with their tools and skills, creating a thought form entity. And usually the idea is then to send that entity, that thought form entity, to go attack the targeted person. It's like creating an attack dog or something, even though it's not a dog. Well, the person who's creating the entity can create any form. Here's what I want to be really clear about. The person creating the thought form entity can decide to form it into whatever it wants. It can create a thought form entity that looks like a demon. Mind blown here. Okay. So a person could be thinking that they're under attack by a demon, but it's actually somebody created a thought form entity to terrorize the person and think that they're being attacked by a demon, and they're not. Mind blown. Oh my God. So they could make the entity take the form of a demon, of an animal, of some kind of like scary specter ghost kind of thing, or a creature of some kind. They can make it whatever form they want to, with the intent that they are going to terrorize the targeted person. Now, here's where it gets tricky. That once the thought form entity is sent to the targeted person, the thought form entity, absolutely, it can act very similar to all of the other standard kinds of entities, like demons, jinn, dark elementals. And I work with all good elementals, but there are some dark ones, just like there are dark people. And any other evil spirits out there. So, the thought form entity can act very similar to any of the standard kinds of entities, in that it can cause paranormal situations like lights flashing. It can mess with the person telepathically, giving the person scary messages, scary OCD thought loops. That's what gets tricky, because the thought form entity is one of the types of beings that can actually activate OCD thought loops, making you feel like you're crazy, scary thoughts, terrible thoughts. Okay. So as I'm going through all of this, if anything doesn't make sense, feel free to ask. Okay. All right. So the main purpose in this kind of instance is that the dark practitioner is wanting to terrorize the person. Some people have said that they have seen worse psychic attacks from thought form entities than from actual standard entities. Like a thought form entity attack is worse than an attack from a demon. But I disagree with that. I have found that when I try to clear a thought form entity, usually it like just like I can dissolve it like that. It's so easy to dissolve. Whereas a real entity is harder to clear. That's my experience. Now, thought form entities, by the way, just to clarify what I just said, thought form entities are actually real. They have been brought into reality. Now, they might not be showing up in physical form, like as a monster, like walking down your street, but they are real. They have been brought into reality, at least in the spiritual sense. Okay, so they are real. But because of how they're created, I have found that it's much easier to clear, to just like dissolve them. Like I can almost instantly dissolve them and make their energy dissipate compared to other entities. I would say for me, my experience has been that they're 100 times easier to clear. I think that it would depend on the circumstance though, because if a person was unlucky enough to have a thought form entity sent to them by an extremely adept, powerful dark magician, then I'm sure that would be harder to clear. But most of the stuff that gets sent to people is like little just people who are not very experienced, who are not masters at what they're doing, and they're just mad at somebody, and so they've taken a spell book or something they found online, and they've created a tulpa, a thought form entity, to attack someone because they're just pissed off, and I can clear it like that because it's just ridiculous. Stephanie Hardy says, I was in a class once where the teacher was teaching us to create balls of light in our hands and then release it. Once mine was blue fuzzy ball and had eyeballs and started becoming a thought form, and I had to dissolve it. Yeah, actually, I know somebody else who said that her and a group of friends, they were focusing on this folk story about some like scary entity that didn't actually exist, but they were being stupid, and I would not recommend this. But they were focusing intentionally on creating this entity. I don't even think they did a magical practice, just focus as a group. It was like 3 or 5 people together. Um, and then she said that a couple of years later, she was really surprised because there were sightings of this being, of this like creature or whatever that was part of the local lore. I don't even remember where she was living. I don't recommend doing that, but that was an example of like some people intentionally creating a tulpa, but like why? That was just stupid. Like just totally stupid. But Stephanie, I want to come back to your comment. I think that was very astute of you to recognize that something was happening and to just go ahead and dissolve it, because like you weren't intentionally trying to create a thought form entity. If you were intentionally trying to do that, then you could have kept going because you were choosing to, but you saw that something was going kind of sideways and you took care of it right away. So that was really good. Mocha says, this is mind-blowing. One thing I don't understand is why would anyone even want to attack another like that? Well, it's really interesting living on this planet. And it kind of brings back the thought that I just mentioned a minute ago, that I tend to attract students that are down to earth and have a wholesome streak like I do. And so it's really hard for people like us to imagine that there are people on the planet that would even be okay with intentionally doing stuff like this. Like, we are a group of empathic, deeply feeling people here in this group. Like, we would never want to cause harm to anybody. But unfortunately, there are lots of people on the planet who I think I heard, it wasn't an official study, but it was a quote by someone who specializes in narcissists. So just for example, and I think she said that like 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 people in her assessment, as someone who specializes in narcissism, she said 1 in 4 or 1 in 5, I can't remember, people walking around in this world are narcissists. And I know we're not talking about narcissists specifically today, but just bringing to light the idea that there are personality types out there that are quite common, more common than you might guess, that would be totally okay with doing this. Totally okay. Lisa is asking, would that be considered a curse? In my definition of a curse, I would consider it. I would definitely put it under that umbrella. If somebody was intentionally initiating a psychic attack against a person, and it may include a thought form entity, or it might include anything, all sorts of things. But I would definitely consider it a psychic attack, and I think I would also put it under the umbrella of a curse. It would be a an element included in a curse. Alex is saying, earlier you mentioned thought form entities are weaker. Is it because of who created it? Yes, it is because of who created it. Like a weak magician, which rather than go or source. I didn't get the last part. But yes, if the practitioner, the negative practitioner, is not very strong, the thought form entity is also not very strong. And therefore, it's very easy to clear. Virginia says, there are accounts by Tibetan monks that created their tulpas. At first, they were gentle. Then it went the wrong way. I've heard that too. I've heard of that happening as well, which is why I don't personally work with creating personal tulpas for healing and stuff, because once you have created it, it does have a mind of its own. It's like children. Like, they have a mind of their own, and they're not always going to do what you want them to do. And I would rather find a different method for healing, for example. Okay, so I talked about how there were two ways that a thought form entity can be created. The first being that it's knowingly created. Knowingly created. We just went over that. That's the scenario where there's a dark magician who is misusing their power. The other way that a thought form can be created is unknowingly. So the first one is knowingly or intentionally. The second way is unknowingly, unintentionally, by a person or a group of people. So simply by focusing mentally, emotionally on something and belief in a particular being, they actually bring the thought form entity version of it into reality. Okay. So here's where, like, having faith in something and focusing on it all the time, that can actually bring, like, so let's say that thing doesn't even exist, but the person or the group of people really believe in it. Then by focusing on it or praying to it or sending lots of emotions, faith, all of that, they can actually bring a thought form entity into reality, a thought form entity version of whatever it is that they believe in. Okay. I'm going to answer your question in a second, Stephanie. For example, let's say that everyone started believing in the flying spaghetti monster. People might, and if everybody is believing in the flying spaghetti monster, and they all start praying to the flying spaghetti monster and focusing and doing chanting, hours of chanting to the flying spaghetti monster, and just like thinking about it all the time, visualizing. Everybody has pictures of the flying spaghetti monster on their wall, and they have it above their altar and whatever, all that stuff. Then people might actually start seeing actual apparitions of it. Because with all of that focus, all of that focused intent, they can actually bring a thought form entity into being. So that's kind of a mind somersault, because then we think about, well, what are the things that we believe in our culture? Like, what part of it is real and what part of it is created? Ooh, that's a whole other rabbit hole. You can have fun sliding down that fun slide later. Stephanie says, if good thought form entities to heal or protect go wrong, couldn't you just dissolve them? Well, you could, but it's just messy. It's just way messier, right? And if you do an excellent job at creating a really good healing servitor, then if you've done an excellent job, the better job that you've done at creating them, the harder they might be to dissolve. So it's just messy. It's just messy, right? So I will leave it up to each of your own personal discernment as to whether you want to work with that kind of energy or not. Yeah. Mocha says, can positive affirmations and mantras turn into thought forms? I mean, I'm going to say no, but like anything is possible. So it's kind of no, but sort of yes. So positive affirmation, like if you're saying a positive affirmation, like, I am whole, healthy, and happy, and good things happen for me every day, that's not going to create a thought form entity. But if you have an affirmation that the wording is such that you're focusing on creating an entity, Like the flying spaghetti monster is my I'm trying to think of something. The flying spaghetti monster is the source of my well-being. Like if you just keep saying that over and over again, yeah, that probably could create something eventually. Okay. So yes, so no and yes, and it kind of depends. As for mantras, like when we get into Hindu chants, and you're focusing your intent on a particular deity, then you are strengthening that deity. Now, I haven't done a psychic evaluation to determine, and I thought about this. I knew that this would come up. I haven't done a psychic evaluation on which deities are real and which are thought form entities created by the collective of humankind. I thought about this and I was like, you know what? I just don't even want to look at that. Like at this point, I'm not going to look at that. So I'm not going to say like these particular Hindu gods or goddesses or other cultural gods and goddesses are not real or are real or some are authentic and some are from created by thought form means. But if you were to do chants, whether they're Hindu chants, when you're talking about mantras, it makes me think of Hindu chanting. Yeah, if you're focusing over and over again on prayers to an entity, whether it's like Hindu chants, Catholic prayers, I was raised Catholic, like whatever, fill in the blank of whatever prayers or mantras, yeah, that can definitely empower something. If it doesn't exist, it can bring it into existence. Like, so again, I feel like this, like there's like multiple mind explosions happening in this content here because it's just like brain somersaults everywhere. Like, oh my God, what? Now, okay, I'm going to answer Cherry's question in a second. So we're talking about how thought form entities can be unknowingly created. So the first way was knowingly by a negative magical practitioner. Second way is unknowingly, where somebody is just putting a lot of focus into something. And we talked about the funny example of the flying spaghetti monster. You could actually create that if you wanted to. Now, thought form entities tend to be invisible to most people, but they tend to be seen by clairvoyance. So people who can normally see energy, who can normally see entities, ghosts, etc., might also be able to see thought form entities. Okay. And mythological beings can exist as long as people are energizing them through their thoughts, beliefs, and focus. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. Mythological beings can exist as thought form entities as long as people are energizing them through focused thoughts, feelings, mental focus, etc., emotional focus. But they eventually will fade into nothingness when people stop believing in them. Okay, so I'm one of those people that's able to exist in the in-between. So I still love lots of the mythological beings. So knowing this detail doesn't throw that off for me. I'm like, it's okay. That's fine. I'm going to still send them love, and I'm going to send the mythological creatures lots of love because I still love them. And again, I'm not determining which deities and which mythological beings are actually real or not real. That's for you to figure out. But we're just exploring how the thought form entity aspect fits in here. Cherry says, what about angels in this context? Well, in my experience, I can say definitively, in my own experience, thousands of times, I do believe that actual angels do exist, not thought form angels. So like fake, not actually real in the sense that we think of them. But could somebody create an angel that's actually a thought form entity? Could they focus their intent and create a being that is like an angel? Sure. Like you could create a thought form entity that's a dog, that's a creature, that's a unicorn, that's an angel, that's a Bigfoot, that's a demon, that's a scary entity thing. Anything can be created via the thought form entity aspect. Okay. Is that clear as mud now? Yeah, so in my experience, angels are absolutely real. Now, side tangent here. I do not believe everything in the Judeo-Christian belief system about angels. I do think that some of the beings that have been written about and that have been called angels were experiences that humans had with other beings, and they didn't understand what they were experiencing, and so they were like, I don't know what this is, it must be an angel. So I think there are things that are thought of as angels, which I'm not going to go too much into this today. This is going to be another video, but just FYI. So I don't take all of it, right? But I've had many experiences, like daily, with guardian angels and with archangels. And there are a lot of people who are against archangels because they say that they're archons, which is, to me, I'm just laughing because I'm like, just because both words start with ARCH, that's a really far reach. And archons are bad entities. Not the same thing at all, but that's my experience as a clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, all the clairs. So I know I went on a side tangent, but bringing it back in, yes. So I do believe there are actually authentic angels. Could you create a thought form entity version of an angel? Sure, you could, but I wouldn't. I would just call in an actual angel because they're going to be more helpful for you. Like they're more powerful, in my opinion. Mocha is saying that she was wondering the same thing about angels. Rose is saying, oh gee, I missed the first hour. Looks like I'm always going to watch this on replay. Well, actually, next month, when the daylight savings time happens, because that's happening next weekend, I think, like if you're on a particular work schedule or something, for most of you, class is going to be an hour later. I'm here in Arizona where we don't do daylight savings time, so it's still going to be at 1 p.m. for Arizonans, but for the rest of you, it's all going to shift an hour. But don't get too confused about it now. I will post an announcement, so hopefully that will help you not miss it next time. Stephanie Hardy says, so are all mythological creatures thought forms? Or just some of them, like a unicorn? So I am definitely not saying that. And I'm just kind of leaving it open. I'm just going to leave that open, and I'm not going to really give a definitive answer to that because I love unicorns. And I think we can all kind of go into an existential, like, questioning process about all of the beings that we know. Like that, like we could go into a big thought loop over that, but I think we're just going to say that I'm not going to answer that one directly. I love unicorns. I'm having trouble accessing my comments now. Yeah, so I know I didn't answer your question directly. I think one of the things is I'm going to go into meditation on this. I like to go and get these deeper answers. I go out and stare at the mountain and get more clarity. Because I knew this would come up, but the simple thing here is that we know that thought form entities do exist. We can create them. People with negative intent can create them. Groups of people can create them and have created them. And also, we could kind of think, okay, so if let's just say if unicorns are thought form entities. I'm not saying that they are, but let's just pretend. Well, they're still awesome, and they're still individual sentient beings. Like, they still exist. They are still authentic beings, right? I don't have the answer as to whether they are like real or thought form created. I don't have the answer. Yeah, you can do some work with that. Mocha says, so basically your imaginary friend as a child could indeed become a thought form. Just thought of that. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So we were talking about how thought form entities can be seen by clairvoyance. We touched on mythological beings and also even some deities. Okay, so that's important. I don't know which ones are caused by thought forms, and I chose to not go deep and look at that because I feel like that's for each of you to just wrestle with that. All right, so I did mention before that in my experience, clearing thought form entities tends to be pretty easy, like to just use all of the standard basic entity clearing methods. Actually, I can just mentally clear something usually. I can mentally clear a thought form entity usually. I won't even need to do some elaborate thing. I can usually just be like, all right, I'm clearing you now. Poof. And then it goes away. And again, that's an entity that hasn't been, a thought form entity that hasn't been created by like a master dark magician, right? But just an average person. The methods for clearing tend to be pretty easy. And again, in the paid academy, Spiritual Empowerment Academy, we tend to cover, we cover all sorts of clearing techniques. So if you're needing that, that's where you'd find that. psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. Let's see what else we got here. Sharon says, thanks for clarifying archons and archangels. I read about the false light. I have your book. Thank you. Yeah, I am sure that I'm going to do a video in the future again about angels. Actually, Sharon, if you go to my YouTube channel, Psychic Protection Sanctuary on YouTube, that's the name of the channel, Psychic Protection Sanctuary, there's a video called The Truth About Angels that I've created. And I go a lot more in depth about what my experiences with angels have been. And I do spend about 5 or 10 minutes talking about, I go on a side tangent talking about the archons and everything. But I'll probably do another video about that in the future. A lot of people in the, quote, truther movement are just so anti-angels. And in that video that I just mentioned, I explain why I do still work with them, but only the ones that are actually angels. So I should do a video where I explain what I mean by that. I'm going to leave you with a cliffhanger right here. Stephanie says, I love unicorns too. I do. I love them. I used to see them very clearly right after my son was born. Every time he cried, I would see several unicorns rise up out of the woods to watch after my son. Oh, that makes me cry. That's amazing. Oh, and dragons too. Yeah. So dragons. McKenna says, oh no, I got the wrong time. Yeah, I actually had the wrong time posted. I jumped the gun and posted something like an hour. Anyway, that's probably my fault, but next month we should be on track. Mocha says, I had a leprechaun come to me in a dream to comfort me during the quarantine. He did not look like the ones you see on the greeting cards. That's cool. I've actually seen, at the place where I used to live on the Kansas prairie, I saw gnomes out there all the time. And I never believed in gnomes until I moved out there. I was like, gnomes, I guess gnomes exist, because I was getting messages from them. They were telling me what herbs to take for my health conditions. And then I would go look up the herbs and I'd be like, that's exactly what I needed. Like, what? Like, how did I get that? And there's a video somewhere, by the way, somewhere, I don't know where it is, somewhere on my YouTube channel, there's a video about gnomes on my property. So there's all sorts of cool beings that exist out there. Okay, so we're going to almost wrap it up. We had a couple of questions, and McKenna, you'll definitely want to go back and watch from the beginning, because I really go into detail in separating a lot of these things out, because I'm going to address one of your questions here, but I go into it a lot more earlier on. Okay, so one of the questions was from our Facebook group that was posted a while back was, are thought form entities different from negative thought forms that have been placed there by an entity? Yeah, so just to recap, negative thoughts, I tend to call those OCD thought loops. And a thought form entity is an actual entity, an actual being, spiritual being, that is created through thought. Somebody has created it by thought and focus. They've created an entity. Okay. And I really break that down earlier on, so you can watch the replay. Alex says, when you hold these groups, do you place a shield on all of us, or do each of us take care of our own protection? I know I've been protecting every 5 minutes while I'm online lately. Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually have all sorts of grids of protection around all sorts of aspects of my work, including this Facebook group, including my paid program. There's all sorts of clearing and protection that we do. But that said, it's also important for everybody to ground and to set up whatever shields are effective for you, because you want to have your own personal boundaries at all times, wherever you are, whatever you're watching or whatever group that you're attending. It's a both and. So the person putting it on is responsible for maintaining the energy of the group, but also you are also responsible for maintaining your own energy. So that, I'm not just talking to you, Alex, but just a little FYI for everybody. Like, if you go to a yoga class, don't assume that even if the teacher knows how to keep a sacred, safe space, that there won't be any impact from somebody else in the group or something. That you also have to keep your own boundaries up. So it's a both and. So thank you for asking that question, so we could have that little teachable moment. That's really important. Mocha, what an awesome class. Yeah. And Mocha is saying, excellent question, Alex. Really, really good question, and really important for everybody to hear the answer. Because I do think that a lot of people, when they attend a class, whether it's online or in person, whether it's a spiritual class, whether it's a yoga class or whatever, and I'm not speaking of you, Alex, but just more generally speaking, observation that I've made is that people in general tend to assume that, like, let's say they go to a yoga class. I hear this a lot from people who've gone to yoga classes. Oh, I love yoga, but they've gone to a class and they just assume that the facilitator knows how to keep a safe space, and a lot of times they don't. A lot of times the facilitator doesn't have the level of understanding that you do. They don't have the level of understanding that you do, which is unfortunate. Like, I wish that I could go and like force all wellness teachers to take my class, but I can't do that. So that's why wherever you go, whatever you do, you always have to do your thing, whatever your method is, whatever your protection, your grounding, all of that. And even if somebody is holding safe, sacred space, you still need to do that. Yeah. Stephanie M is saying, how can you tell the difference between a negative OCD thought loop and a negative thought entity? Well, a negative, so an OCD thought loop is going to show up as negative thoughts circling around and around in your mind. That is an OCD thought loop. A thought form entity is an entity. So if you are having like an entity issue, if there's an entity showing up in your presence, then you're dealing with some kind of entity. It might be a thought form entity. Okay. So what you're going to do to discern what kind of entity you're dealing with, thought form entity, demon, jinn, dark fae, evil ghost, blah, blah, blah. You're going to use some of the techniques that you have access to in the Spiritual Empowerment Academy, in the archives. And you do have access to that, Stephanie. There's a whole series of classes on how you can use particular tools to go through a particular list of types of entities and check which kind of entity you're dealing with. But to clarify, if you're having negative loops, negative thoughts in your head, that is an issue with OCD thought loops. OCD thought loops can be caused by your own unhealed stuff. OCD thought loops can be caused by somebody sending you psychic attack. They can be caused by a demon. They can be caused by jinn, by any negative entity. They can be caused by a thought form entity messing with you. So OCD thought loops can be caused by a whole bunch of different things. And a thought form entity is just one of the numerous things that could activate OCD thought loops. And even just like living in the collective soup of our society, all of that collective energy that we're in the middle of, that can cause OCD thought loops. Like just all the negative loops going over and over again. Oh, I don't think I got all of your question. Where'd it go? Would the entity cause you to fear or have negative thoughts? Yeah, I think I addressed that. Okay, oops. Oh my goodness. Sometimes my comments go crazy on here. There we go. I might have missed something, and I apologize if I missed anybody's, but now it's not letting me go back. Mocha, one of my mentors, would always remind me that curses, spells, etc. have no power over you unless you allow it to. Yes, that's absolutely that's absolutely true. And also, one thing that can happen through conditioning in this society is that we have been taught over and over again and brainwashed and conditioned that we are not powerful. And so part of the work that I end up doing with people who are clearing out psychic attack is helping them clear all of that through all of the physical methods, all of the tangible methods, and all of the spiritual methods, but also helping them to reclaim their power and remember that they were actually powerful in the first place. But oftentimes when someone is under attack, they have an entity that's sending them constant OCD thought loops, telling them that they are less powerful and that the entity is all powerful. And it's this constant bombardment of this message. And so we have to unwind that. And beliefs are powerful. Like if you don't believe that you're powerful, then even if I tell you that you're powerful, it's a journey remember that you are powerful. Okay. So yeah, so we can say like, all of that doesn't have power over you. Curses, spells, etc. doesn't have power over you unless you allow it to. But if disempowerment has been pounded into you from day one, even just hearing the words about how powerful you are, oftentimes it's not enough for it to click back for you. A lot of times people have to go through some inner work journeys to clear out childhood wounding and to finally remember that they're powerful again. To clear out all of the negative thoughts from the entity trying to get them to think that they're not powerful. And by the way, that a lot of psychic attack is psychological, meaning that the entity might not, like whatever kind of entity it is, might not be powerful at all. It might not be very powerful, but it messes with the person's mind psychologically to get the person to believe all sorts of things. And I do have a couple of videos on my YouTube channel about psychological warfare and all of that. And there have been so many comments coming in, and I appreciate all of that. And I think I might not be able to see all of them. Okay. Bye, Donna. See ya. Stephanie M is saying, and versus telepathic negative thoughts sent to you. Okay. Yeah. So Stephanie, were you here at the beginning, the first half an hour? Because we did go over the difference. So if someone is sending thoughts to you telepathically, that's not that's telepathic mind control. Okay. A thought form entity is an actual entity. Okay. So what might be helpful, because I know this is like, it's kind of a confusing topic. So you might go back and watch the video again from the beginning. And I think that might be necessary for maybe a lot of people to go through from the beginning and just watch it again and then get everything really compartmentalized, helping to understand what the difference is between everything. Yeah? Okay. All right. Yeah, McKenna says, yes, such a journey to remember your power. And Mocha says, it was a long journey for me, still on it, going through the twists and turns. Absolutely. Yeah. I wish I could just like snap my fingers and make someone be able to call their power back, to reclaim their power. But I just have to like hold space for them, right? And help them do that on their own. Okay. I think there was another question I wanted to address. All right, so there's one final question and then we'll wrap up. So if you had anything else you wanted to share, go ahead and start typing real quick so I don't miss it. One of the questions was, what are the signs and symptoms of a thought form entity? And here's where it gets tricky. They will act like what they pretend to be. So, for example, if it is a thought form entity that was created to look like a demon, it may mostly act like a demon. And I say mostly because it might act a little bit off from the standard, and that might be your clue that, oh, something is a little bit different. So fill in the blank with whatever kind of entity it's pretending to be, whatever kind of whatever form the thought form is in. If it's acting like a scary creature or or a demon or a jinn or whatever, then whatever the signs are and the symptoms are of that kind of entity, that's what you're going to see. So it's tricky. This whole topic has been really tricky. It's tricky. So what you're going to look for in general is, just your basic symptoms of entity interference or psychic attack. And there's a whole extended quiz, like a whole list of this in my book, Darkness Disguised as Light. And you can get this on Amazon. that will give you a very in-depth list of indicators that something's going on, but it is a lot trickier to determine if it is a false light entity. What is necessary to determine that is for you to have the intuitive and psychic skills, the tools, the intuitive tools, the different tools that I teach in the online academy, Spiritual Empowerment Academy, where you learn specific ways to determine, okay, am I under psychic attack? Is something going on right now? And what kind of entity is it? Okay, because with thought form entities, there's not just a clear indicator like if these three things are happening, it's definitely a thought form entity. No, it's like kind of smoke and mirrors. It tends to be pretty confusing. So you will definitely need to learn some tools for determining type of entity. And that's something that I teach in the academy. I break it down. Mocha says, thank you so much. I love the fact that you go out of your way to address everyone's questions, concerns. Inclusiveness is healing in itself. I need to get your book. It sounds enlightening. Yeah, and I changed the price of my book several months ago. So the Kindle version is under $10. It's $9.95 or something like that. So, all right, let's go ahead and wrap up. Rose is saying, I'm looking forward to watching this entire video. Thank you, Maya. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And send good vibes for the news that I'm waiting for, that I'm making you guys hang off a cliff, and I'm not telling you what the news is about, but I'm waiting on some news. So send good vibes for that. Hopefully I'll find out soon. And if you want to find out how to work with me more deeply, then check out my academy. And you can go to my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. Under the events tab, you'll see Spiritual Empowerment Academy. And that is for you if you have been having trouble discerning the energies around you, understanding how to manage your energy, how to protect, or if you're dealing with any kind of psychic attack. Okay. So I look forward to seeing you all on the YouTube channel, Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and the Facebook group, also called Psychic Protection Sanctuary. Thank you, everybody. We just had like a whole bunch of thank you comments come through, and they're all gone. I can't see them now, but you're welcome. And thank you for being here. Sending you all my love, and feel free to participate in the free Facebook group, Psychic Protection Sanctuary. There's a discussion post posted almost every day. So feel free to participate in those. It just kind of helps you feel more anchored, especially if you're dealing with some uncomfortable or scary spiritual circumstances right now. Just being a part of that group can be helpful. But I will tell you, just what's coming to my mind right now is the paid program, Spiritual Empowerment Academy, is much more interactive. Like there's a lot more conversations in the paid group, a lot more support, mutual support. It's just very, very active on there. Lots of support. So if you're needing really active group support with whatever you're going through, that would be the place to go. So you can reach out and ask me any questions. And check out the website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com, for more details. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a beautiful day. Sending you all my love.